This is a big change. The family as we know it no longer exists.
Your Honor, before I give my testimony, you need to understand something. Meri Brown's voice cut through the low murmur of Courtroom 6A like a blade. What I'm about to reveal will not only destroy Kody Brown's reputation, it could send both him and Robin to prison. And I have proof. The courtroom froze. Kody Brown went rigid, his eyes widening as if the air had been sucked from his lungs. Robin's hand slipped from the table and fell into her lap. No one spoke. Not the gallery. Not the attorneys. Not even the cameras dared to click. Meri stepped forward and placed a thick black binder on the witness stand. Across its front, a single word was stamped in bold ink. Confidential. Inside were bank statements, forged deeds, fraudulent signatures, financial scripts, and a handwritten diary entry that read, "If Meri ever finds out what we did, we're finished." This was no reality TV spectacle. This was devastation, about to unfold under oath, before a judge, a jury, and a nation watching. The gavel slammed down with a crack like thunder. Court is now in session, Judge Harmon declared, her voice sharp and unyielding. The packed courtroom fell into absolute silence. Every seat was taken. Reporters, former fans, estranged relatives, and legal observers packed the cold room shoulder to shoulder. At the defense table sat Kody Brown, once the polished face of polygamous television success, now pale and unmoving. Beside him, Robin sat perfectly styled, though fear leaked through the careful layers of makeup. Kody didn't blink. He stared across the aisle at the woman he once called his rock. But Meri Brown was no one's rock anymore. She stood tall in a navy blue suit, chin lifted, posture unbreakable. The binder in her hands wasn't just paperwork, it was a detonator. Judge Harmon adjusted her glasses. "Miss Brown, please place your right hand on the Bible." Meri did. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" "I do," Meri replied, steady and unwavering. She stepped closer to the stand, gripping the binder. "Before I begin, Your Honor, I want to make one thing clear. I stayed silent for 10 years. But silence only protects the guilty. And the two people sitting before me today have lied to this court, to this family, and to the American public." She opened the binder. The lies end now. This wasn't about jealousy. It wasn't about a failed marriage. This was about stolen money, fabricated identities, and crimes committed in her name. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Kody shifted, arms crossing tightly, jaw clenched. Robin leaned toward him, whispering frantically. But it was already too late. "Exhibit A," Meri said. She presented documents showing that her personal information, including her social security number, had been used to purchase a $730,000 property in Sedona, Arizona. The deed flashed onto the projection screen. Owner, Meri Caroline Brown. Filed by West Coyote Holdings LLC. Signed by Kody Wynn Brown. "I never signed this," Meri said, pointing to the forged signature. "I didn't even know this house existed until 6 months ago. And I certainly never approved the withdrawal of family funds for its down payment." Judge Harmon leaned forward. "Are you alleging identity theft?" "Yes, Your Honor." And that was only the beginning. Exhibit B revealed a detailed paper trail of TLC payments siphoned from the Brown family entertainment account directly into a private investment fund controlled solely by Robin Brown. Regular deposits. Same-day transfers.
No suggestion.
When asked how she obtained the information, Meri answered simply, "I asked questions. And when they lied, I dug deeper." Then came the footage no one expected. A hidden, behind-the-scenes video played, one never meant to surface. Robin appeared on screen in a dressing room, half-curled hair, robe loosely tied. "If I cry in the confessional and blame Meri again," Robin said casually, "we'll get another hardship bonus. Kody, just back me up. The check comes faster." Off camera, Kody replied, "Make the tears look real this time." The courtroom erupted. Judge Harmon slammed the gavel for order. Cameras clicked wildly. One reporter whispered into her microphone, This could be the end of the Brown brand. Robin shook violently. Kody looked physically ill. Meri wasn't finished. Exhibit C was a leather-bound diary, Robin's. Inside were entries outlining financial manipulation, deliberate deception, and explicit instructions to sign documents using Meri's name because nobody ever verifies. Receipts followed.
Wire transfers.
Jewelry invoices.
Boutique lease.
All traced back to the Brown Family Children's Trust, established in 2014. You took money meant for our children, Meri said, her voice breaking just once. What about Gabe? Garrison? Truly? Kody said nothing. Judge Harmon's tone shifted. Is it your position that this trust was intentionally depleted? It's not an opinion, Meri replied. It's recorded fact. Then the courtroom doors creaked open. Christine Brown entered. She hadn't been called. She volunteered. I'm here to give a statement, Christine said firmly. Under oath, she revealed phone recordings, emails, and messages that corroborated Meri's claims, proof of gaslighting, threats, and deliberate scapegoating. She exposed plans to remove other wives, manipulate TLC narratives, and even seize custody of truly under false religious claims. The courtroom watched as years of silence collapsed in real time. By the time Janelle Brown took the stand, the case had evolved from civil dispute to criminal investigation. She presented unreported income, shell companies, tax fraud, and laundering operations registered under Robin's maiden name, and even her son's. This isn't just testimony, Janelle said calmly. This is evidence for arrest. The judge ordered the exhibits secured and contacted the state attorney's office. Outside, headlines exploded. Inside, Kody slumped. Robin covered her face. This was no longer reality television. This was reality, under oath. And the truth had finally arrived. When court reconvened after lunch, the atmosphere inside Courtroom 6A had changed completely. The air was heavier, tighter, like the moment before a storm finally breaks. Outside, news vans were stacked bumper to bumper. Inside, every seat was filled again, but now no one whispered. Everyone listened. Judge Harmon returned to the bench, her expression unreadable. She adjusted her robe, glanced at the stack of exhibits now labeled and secured beside her, and spoke with deliberate calm. Call your next witness. Meri's attorney stood. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Janelle Brown. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Janelle rose slowly from the gallery. She wasn't dramatic.
She didn't rush.
She moved with the calm certainty of someone who had already mourned what was about to die. She wore a slate-gray button-down, glasses perched low on her nose, and carried a modest satchel, nothing flashy, nothing theatrical. But inside it was the final fracture point of the Brown Empire. She was sworn in and took her seat. I'm not just here to testify, Janelle said quietly. I'm here to deliver evidence that will be used by the state attorney's office to issue an arrest. The courtroom went silent, again. But this time it wasn't shock. It was understanding. Judge Harmon leaned forward. You're alleging criminal conduct? Yes, Your Honor. Multiple offenses. Even Meri turned in her seat, stunned. Christine blinked hard. This wasn't coordinated. Janelle had come prepared to burn the ground beneath them all, and she was doing it alone. Janelle opened her satchel and removed a thick folder labeled Brown Family Tax Records, 2015 to 2022. These documents, she began, were never submitted to the IRS. The judge stiffened. I received them from an anonymous source who worked within Kody Brown's former bookkeeping circle. He was paid to stay silent. But when the investigation began, and when Meri came forward, he decided to tell the truth. The documents were handed to the bailiff and passed to the bench. Inside were unreported TLC income streams, falsified religious donations, and real estate gifts disguised as faith-based contributions, totaling more than $218,000. Another $92,000 had been wired to a shell company registered under Robin's maiden name. Kody's lips trembled. Robin leaned toward her attorney, whispering urgently, her hands shaking. Janelle didn't stop. There are also text messages. The projector flared to life. Kody's words appeared on the screen, unmistakable. Kody, Janelle doesn't have access to that account, right?
Robin, no.
Just us.
Kody, good.
Tell her it's frozen because of Vegas taxes. Robin, if Meri digs, we say it was handled before she left. The courtroom erupted in hushed disbelief. They didn't just hide money, Janelle said evenly. They laundered it. The next slide landed like a body blow. JCK and Sons Contracting LLC registered owner, Dayton Sullivan Robin's eldest son. The deposits followed $8,000, $12,200, $15,500, none linked to legitimate contracting work. The business address traced back to Robin's online boutique. This LLC wasn't a business, Janelle said. It was a pipeline. Kody transferred funds into it as expenses. Robin withdrew them as tax-free income. The judge's face hardened. Even the court reporter paused before typing again. So to be clear, Judge Harmon said slowly, you are alleging money laundering, tax evasion, and identity fraud? Yes, Your Honor. And conspiracy. Kody slammed his hand onto the table. This is insane. One more outburst, the judge warned, and you will be removed. Kody leaned back, defeated. Then something unexpected happened. Robin stood up. Not gracefully. Not confidently. She stood because her legs failed her if she stayed seated. I didn't mean for this to happen, she sobbed. It went too far. The courtroom froze. Her attorney whispered sharply, sit down. But Robin kept going. It was supposed to be protection, she cried. The show was ending. The money was drying up. I was trying to protect my kids. Meri rose halfway from her seat. By stealing from mine? Robin collapsed back into her chair. Judge Harmon's voice cut through the chaos. That is enough. She turned to the bailiff. Contact the state attorney's office immediately. Based on the testimony presented today, this court is referring the matter for criminal prosecution. A murmur rolled through the room, then silence. This court will recess for 30 minutes, the judge continued. Defendants are not to leave the premises. Kody stared straight ahead, hollow. Robin buried her face in her hands. Meri exhaled for the first time in years. Christine reached for her hand. Janelle closed her satchel. Outside, reporters sprinted. Headlines exploded across screens nationwide. Social media ignited. Hashtags trended within minutes. Hashtag Brown trial, hashtag Meri speaks, hashtag Robin exposed, hashtag Sister Wives Courtroom inside Courtroom 6A. Something irreversible had happened. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This wasn't reality television. This was a criminal reckoning. And the arrests were coming. Before you go, don't forget to like this video and hit that subscribe button and join our YouTube family. Thank you for your support. I have no animosity toward Dayton, Janelle added calmly, her voice steady despite the chaos she had unleashed. He's a good kid. They used his name because they knew the rest of us were watching too closely. Kody looked like a man coming undone. Sweat beaded across his forehead, soaking into his hairline. He turned sharply toward Robin, fury burning in his eyes, but she refused to meet his gaze. She already knew what was coming next, and so did Janelle. And here, Janelle continued, lifting a document into the air, is the check that proves Kody used Meri's forged signature to cash out her retirement early, without her consent. A collective gasp tore through the courtroom. Janelle held the check aloft like an executioner's blade. The bank gave me this 3 weeks ago after Meri asked me to look into her missing retirement account. Kody filed the paperwork himself. He claimed it was for a family medical emergency. She handed the check to the court clerk. The courtroom camera zoomed in as the image appeared on the projection screen. Memo, emergency fund signed, M. Brown amount, $61,300 date, April 15th, 2022. Meri had never been told. By the time she checked the account, the money was already gone. Meri's eyes filled instantly. She covered her mouth, stunned into silence. Christine sat frozen beside her, hands clenched tightly in her lap, her face drained of color. Judge Harmon's voice trembled, not with uncertainty, but with fury. That is identity theft. That is financial fraud of the highest order. Janelle nodded. And I'm not finished. From her satchel, she removed one final envelope, a manila folder marked sealed, and handed it directly to the judge. Inside, Janelle said, is a sworn statement from the bank officer who processed the transaction. It confirms Kody brought the documents in personally and Robin presented identification under Meri's name. They assumed it wouldn't be flagged. Judge Harmon opened the folder. She read silently. Then she paused. The room held its breath. Bailiff, the judge said slowly, deliberately, call the state attorney. The courtroom erupted. Kody's lawyer leapt to her feet. Your Honor, sit down. Judge Harmon snapped. This court will recess in 10 minutes. Until then, the defendants will remain seated. Robin looked as if she might collapse entirely. Meri stepped closer to Janelle, her voice barely audible. You had all of this? I had to be sure, Janelle whispered back. But I'm done protecting monsters. The handcuffs didn't click. They boomed. 8 minutes later, precisely on the 2 state investigators entered courtroom 6A. The room fell silent again, but this silence was different. This one carried finality. Kody stood, trying to compose himself. I didn't do anything wrong, he said quickly. I can explain. But he was already being read his rights.
Fraud.
Identity theft. Tax evasion. Conspiracy to commit financial misconduct. Robin clutched the chair, sobbing, until the second agent turned to her. Mrs. Brown, we have questions for you as well. You'll be brought in for a separate deposition. No, he did it, Robin cried. I didn't. Her wails echoed down the hallway as she was escorted out. Christine closed her eyes. Meri exhaled, years of weight leaving her lungs. Janelle sat straight ahead, neither smug nor angry, just free. For the first time in this saga, Kody Brown had no wife to flee to. Only consequences. The deposition room, the courtroom, emptied quickly. Kody had vanished, led away in handcuffs, processed, booked, and awaiting further charges. Robin, however, was not arrested, not yet. Instead, she was taken to a private deposition room deep within the courthouse. This wasn't theater. This was where lies either died or multiplied. The room was cold and gray. A single table sat beneath a dim overhead light. At one end sat Detective Marlene Griggs, lead investigator in financial crimes. Beside her was a court-appointed attorney. Across from them sat Robin, mascara streaked down trembling cheeks, hands shaking as she clutched a bottle of water. On the table lay a thick file. Confidential, Brown case evidence chain, number 146, I didn't know, Robin whispered. The folder said otherwise. Detective Griggs didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Mrs. Brown, you are not under arrest at this moment. But I strongly suggest you answer carefully. You are facing multiple counts of financial misconduct, conspiracy, and misuse of identity. Robin sniffed, trying to steady herself. Kody handled everything. I just signed what he told me to sign. Griggs slid the first document across the table. Then explain this. A wire transfer authorization form. Account. Brown Family Trust Destination. Our Brown Boutique Fund amount. $47,000 date. Same day Meri's retirement account was drained. I thought it was for the kids, Robin whispered. Are you sure?
Griggs asked evenly.
Because this document shows the money was immediately used for a boutique lease in your name. Designer inventory. Advertising. No child-related expenses whatsoever. Robin said nothing. Griggs leaned forward. You want to leave here tonight, Robin? Then I need the truth. How far does this go? And when did you start lying?
I didn't, Robin began.
Griggs interrupted, placing another stack of papers on the table. Printed emails. At the bottom of the chain was the sender. R. boutiquesales@gmail. Come, Meri won't know for a while. If you act devastated on camera and blame her again, TLC will keep the storyline focused there. I'll handle the rest. Robin's mouth fell open. No sound came out. The lie had nowhere left to hide. Back in courtroom 6A, Judge Harmon returned to the bench later that afternoon, her expression hardened by what she had witnessed. This court is no longer dealing with a domestic dispute, she stated firmly. This is a criminal conspiracy. Meri and Christine sat side by side, not as former sister wives, but as survivors. Janelle sat just ahead of them, composed and unshaken. Years of manipulation, fear, and silence had finally collapsed under the weight of evidence. Reality television had ended. Reality under oath had begun. When proceedings resumed, Courtroom 6A no longer felt like a place of debate. It felt like a holding chamber for consequences. The energy had shifted from shock to inevitability. Everyone in the room understood that the story had crossed a point of no return. Judge Harmon returned with a stack of documents in her hands and gravity in her eyes. Before we proceed further, she said, this court will formally acknowledge receipt of criminal referrals submitted to the state attorney's office based on testimony and evidence presented today. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Mr. Brown, she continued, her gaze locking onto the empty defense chair Kody had occupied just hours earlier, has been remanded pending further investigation. Mrs. Brown's deposition remains ongoing. Meri sat motionless, hands folded tightly in her lap. Christine leaned back, eyes closed, as though allowing herself, finally, to rest. Janelle stared straight ahead, calm but resolute. Then the judge turned her attention to the gallery. This court will hear no further testimony today, she announced. However, the record will reflect that the evidence presented raises substantial concerns regarding systemic fraud, coercion, and abuse of trust over a period spanning several years. She paused, then added, this is not a case of ignorance. This is a case of intent. The words landed like a final nail. Outside the courthouse, by the time the courtroom doors opened, the courthouse steps had transformed into a media storm. Cameras flashed. Microphones surged forward. Reporters shouted names, questions overlapping into a single roar. Meri, did you know this would end in an arrest? Christine, were the kids aware? Janelle, is this just the beginning? Meri stopped. She turned slowly, meeting the cameras head-on. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. I didn't come here for revenge, she said. I came here for truth. And truth doesn't need volume. Christine stepped beside her. For years, silence was survival. Today, silence would have been complicity. Janelle was last to speak. This wasn't about one mistake, she said. It was about years of calculated harm.
We're done protecting that.
They walked away together, not united by marriage, united by truth. Inside the deposition room, Robin sat hunched forward, her earlier defiance gone. The room felt smaller now. The evidence felt heavier. Detective Griggs slid one final document across the table. This, she said, is your opportunity. The paper was simple. Cooperation terms. You help us untangle this fully, Griggs continued, and the state will consider leniency. You don't, and this becomes much worse. Robin stared at the page, tears dropping onto the ink. He told me it was necessary, she whispered, that everyone else was weak, that I was the only one strong enough to protect the family. Griggs didn't interrupt. He said Meri would never speak, Robin continued, that Christine was already gone, that Janelle would never risk the kids. Her voice cracked. He said if I didn't do it, everything would fall apart. Griggs leaned back. And now? Robin looked down at her hands. Now it already has.
She signed.
The days that followed the fallout was immediate. Accounts were frozen. Properties seized. Production companies issued statements distancing themselves. Former business partners quietly withdrew. The carefully curated image of unity collapsed under subpoena and audit. And then came the charges. Federal tax evasion. Identity theft.
White fraud. Conspiracy.
Misappropriation of trust funds. Each count stacked higher than the last. Kody Brown appeared in court again, this time in a different room, without cameras, without applause, without an audience to perform for. He said little. His attorneys said less. The judge denied bail. The final image weeks later, Meri stood alone in her living room, sunlight spilling across the floor. The binder, the black one, sat closed on the table. Christine called that morning. Janelle followed later in the afternoon. They spoke about mundane things. Weather.
Kids. Plans.
Normal things. Because the extraordinary had finally passed. For years, their lives had been shaped by secrecy, control, and performance. Now, for the first time, there was quiet. Not the silence of fear. The silence of freedom. And somewhere behind concrete walls and locked doors, the man who once believed he could control every narrative finally ran out of stories to tell. Only facts remained. And facts, unlike lies, do not bend. This wasn't reality television anymore. This was reality under oath on the record. Judge Harmon leaned forward, her fingers interlaced, eyes sharp. "So let me be clear," she said slowly. "Your testimony is that Robin attempted to take your child through legal intimidation, using religious claims as leverage?" "Yes, Your Honor," Christine answered without hesitation. "And I have the emails to prove it." She slid the final file across the table. The court clerk opened it and began to read aloud. "Truly is young and pliable. If we move fast, we can prove she's already been blended into our family framework. It'll be a better story to take to court." Robin Brown, August 11th, 2021. The room froze. This wasn't misunderstanding. This wasn't manipulation alone. This was conspiracy. They weren't just building a life together. They were incinerating everyone else's. Christine glanced sideways at Meri. "I should have spoken out earlier," she said softly. "But I didn't want to be the villain. I thought staying quiet was protecting my kids. Now I understand. Keeping quiet kept me captive." Meri nodded, tears rising in her eyes. And for the first time in decades, the courtroom witnessed something no TLC episode had ever shown. Unity between Meri and Christine, not as sister wives, but as survivors. Judge Harmon turned to the bailiff. "Secure these exhibits. We'll reconvene after lunch. And contact the state attorney's office. There may be criminal charges beyond this court's reach." Kody slumped forward. Robin covered her face. Outside, reporters ran. Headlines exploded. And when court resumed for Session 3, everything changed. Session 3. Janelle enters when Courtroom 6A reconvened. The air felt tight, like the moment before a hurricane makes landfall. News trucks crowded the street. Cameras were mounted in every corner. Hashtags were already trending. Kody leaned forward at the defense table, jaw clenched, grinding his teeth. Robin sat beside him, eyes swollen, mascara streaked, clutching a crumpled tissue in one hand and her carefully constructed story in the other. Judge Harmon returned. "Call your next witness." Meri's attorney stood. "Your Honor, our next witness is Janelle Brown." The gasp was instant. Kody whispered something sharp under his breath. Robin went pale. Janelle rose from the gallery, wearing a slate gray button-down and glasses.
Calm.
Measured. Unflinching. She carried a small satchel. Nothing dramatic, nothing flashy. But inside it were documents capable of collapsing everything Kody and Robin had built. She approached the stand like a soldier walking into battle. After being sworn in, she adjusted the microphone and spoke words that transformed a civil case into a criminal investigation. "I'm not just here to testify," Janelle said. "I'm here to hand this court the evidence the state attorney's office will use to issue arrests."
Silence.
Judge Harmon leaned forward. "You're alleging criminal conduct?" Janelle nodded. "Multiple offenses." Even Meri looked stunned. Christine blinked twice. This wasn't coordinated. Janelle had gone rogue. And it was the best thing that could have happened. The evidence unleashed. Janelle opened her satchel and withdrew a thick folder. Brown family tax documents, 2015 to 2022. These files were never submitted to the IRS, she began. "I obtained them from an anonymous informant who previously worked in Kody's bookkeeping group. He was paid to stay quiet. But once the investigation began, and after Meri came forward, he decided to tell the truth." She handed the folder to the bailiff. Inside, unreported TLC income. Cash deals never disclosed. $218,000 in real estate gifts disguised as religious contributions. More than $92,000 wired to a shell company under Robin's maiden name. The courtroom erupted in gasps. Kody's lips trembled. Robin leaned into her attorney, whispering frantically. But Janelle wasn't finished. I also have text messages. The projector flickered to life. Kody, Janelle doesn't have access to this account, right?
Robin, no.
It's just us.
Kody good.
Tell her it's frozen because of the Vegas tax issue. Robin and Meri? Kody, if she digs, say it was handled before she left. Robin, don't worry. They'll never suspect. Not until it's too late. They didn't just hide money, Janelle said evenly. They laundered it. The next slide hit like a freight train. JCK and Sons Contracting LLC registered owner, Dayton Sullivan Robin's son. Bank deposits appeared on screen. $8,000, June 11th, 2021, $12,200, August 2nd, 2021, $15,500, October 28th, 2021, no legitimate construction business exists. Janelle explained. Neither Robin nor Dayton operates one. This LLC functions solely as a laundering pipeline. Kody transferred money in as business expenses, then routed it back to Robin as tax-free profit. The judge looked stunned. So, did the jury. Even the court reporter paused before typing furiously. I have no animosity toward Dayton, Janelle added quietly. He's a good kid. They used his name because they knew the rest of us were watching too closely. Kody looked like a man unraveling. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He turned toward Robin, rage in his eyes. She wouldn't meet his gaze. She already knew what was next. The forged check, and here, Janelle said, lifting one final document, is the check that proves Kody used Meri's forged signature to cash out her retirement without consent. A collective gasp tore through the courtroom. She held it up like an executioner's blade. The bank provided this 3 weeks ago, after Meri asked me to investigate her missing account. Kody filed the paperwork himself. He claimed it was for a family medical emergency. The camera zoomed in. Memo, emergency fund signed, M. Brown amount, $61,300 date, April 15th, 2022. Meri had never been told. By the time she checked the account, the money was gone. Meri covered her mouth, tears spilling freely. Christine sat frozen, hands clenched in her lap. Judge Harmon's voice shook with fury. That is identity theft. That is financial fraud of the highest order. Janelle nodded. And I'm not finished. She retrieved a sealed manila envelope and handed it to the judge. Inside is a sworn statement from the bank officer who processed the transaction. It confirms Kody appeared in person and Robin presented identification under Meri's name. They assumed it wouldn't be flagged. Judge Harmon read silently. Then she looked up and said 5 words that detonated the room. Bailiff.
Call the state attorney.
Chaos erupted. Kody's lawyer jumped up.